Welcome everyone, thanks for joining. We're really excited to talk to you today about transdisciplinary learning at UTS. Please do note this session will now be recorded. We will only record audio and screen share. We won't record any video input from you. But by taking part in this session, you understand and acknowledge that your information will be used for the purposes detailed on screen. But of course, if you don't wish to be recorded as part of the webinar, you can contact innovation@uts.edu.au. Okay, so I'd like to just highlight how I think transdisciplinary learning brings people together, and it recognizes that every person involved comes to the table with their own purpose, their own interests, and the knowledge that they have gained throughout their life and the lives of others. And I think that acknowledging this knowledge and respecting the knowledge that people bring into a transdisciplinary space is what makes working in transdisciplinary ways so powerful. And I'd like to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose ancestral lands the UTS City campus now stands. I'd like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, acknowledging them as the traditional custodians of knowledge for this land. On screen now is the core teaching team, and you'll have the opportunity to hear from some of us today. Please note that you can ask questions throughout using the Q&A tool at the bottom. We might answer some of them in real time, but we can also come back to them at the end of the session. And it's here that I'll hand you over to Tanya.
Hi everyone, I'm really glad to have you here with us this evening. It's just fantastic. So this year we've transitioned from the Faculty of Transdisciplinary Innovation to a pan-university initiative called the TD School, which is really exciting in itself. Within the school, we offer many degree programs, and we're developing general TD electives that all UTS undergraduate students will be undertaking as part of their professional degrees. So there's lots happening in our context at the moment. Of course, our focus in these programs is on transdisciplinarity, where we collaborate across disciplinary and professional boundaries to really generate innovative approaches to complex applied problems. Some of the features of our education programs include thinking differently, being practice and research driven, developing critical and future-oriented capabilities, and really trying to make positive change in the world. In the Grad Cert in TD Learning program, there are 3 core subjects, 3 studio subjects and 1 lab subject. The practice-based focus of these subjects means all students bring their knowledge, their experience and their curiosity to their studies and take what they learn and generate back to trial in their own professional practice and communities. In the core subjects, we introduce students to DD learning concepts, methods, theories, and case studies, as well as complex problem solving, inquiry approaches, and what's really important, imaginative ethical leadership. In the studio and lab subjects, students are immersed in complex professional learning and educational challenges that cut across sectors and stakeholders. So we work with partners to form up those complex challenges. And we've got some really interesting partners lined up for this year. Students work together with external partners and academic researchers to generate new insights and initiatives for action. And that's really important because it's about taking ideas through to realisation and seeing how do we create positive change. And it's really about how students consider the relevance of those developments in the studio subjects to their own professional contexts and networks. We also offer an enterprise stream in the Grad Cert and curate a learning journey for teams who want to address a particular strategic priority in their own organisation. We offer micro-credentials that are equivalent to the Grad Cert subjects for organisations and for individuals. That enables more flexible pathways for people exploring their immediate priorities and study options. You can enrol in a TD Learning micro-credential through UTS Open, and upon successful completion, gain credit into the grad cert of TD Learning if you want to enrol in that program at a later time. The 3 credit point TD Learning micro-credentials are offered online in the short teaching sessions of 5 weeks, and the 6 credit point lab micro-credential runs over 10 weeks. So here you can see the relationship between the core and the studio subjects, with the core subjects having a red background, the studio subjects with a grey background, and the lab with a black background. In the 2 related subjects, Transdisciplinary Learning for Change and Transformational Learning Studio, the focus is on you as a transdisciplinary learner and inquirer within your particular professional practice. In the next 2 related subjects, Design Provocations and Transdisciplinary Prototyping, and the Designing Regenerative Futures Studio, the focus is on designing TD learning environments or using TD or transdisciplinary approaches to designing learning opportunities in your professional contexts. You can see some of the questions we're starting to ask in these subjects, and no doubt more will emerge as we engage in learning and inquiring together with you or the students in these subjects, and also the guests and industry partners. Then, in the following 2 related subjects, TD Interventions and Initiatives Beyond Impact and Entrepreneurial Learning and Experimenting Studio, the focus is squarely on collective learning from a systems perspective. We consider initiatives with potential educational and societal impact and identify where we might leverage them. We use entrepreneurial approaches to education for taking ideas through to realisation and to create value. The 6 credit point Living Learning Lab, as I said, runs over 10 weeks and connects you to a live research project exploring an educational and professional learning challenge. Researchers and practitioners from different sectors are currently tackling together through taking a TD learning approach. This Living Learning Lab provides a creative space for collaboration and experimentation, and to create viable proposals for collective action in your practice. So the connection is always back to what these, I guess, practices mean in your context. Finally, in the enterprise stream subject, Bespoke Collective Action Studio, we tailor a program specifically for the professional learning and development needs of an organisation, school or team to collectively identify and address a particular strategic challenge they face. And that bespoke collective action is actually formed up in collaboration with that organisation and is only opened for the people in that organisation to undertake. And it also has connections then back to the other micro-credentials and subjects for those people. So we have academics and practitioners from different backgrounds and professions teaching into the program. As well, we're working with industry partners in designing these subjects and micro-credentials. And that part of it is really exciting. And at some stage, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. Guests from industry, organisations and universities are scheduled to join us in the various subjects. This evening, you get to hear from 3 of our core team members of teaching academics and practitioners about the ideas and expertise they're passionate about in bringing into this program. So first off, let me hand you back over to Adrian now.
Excellent, thanks, Tanya. So I'm a lecturer in TD School focusing on work integrated learning, or WIL for short. Now, for those of you that might not know what WIL is, it's essentially a space where students integrate their learning with the real world of work, and it's a space where very different stakeholders are learning with each other. That might be stakeholders such as industry partners, governments, communities, university students, academics and professionals. Now, all of these different stakeholders work in very different ways. They have very different needs and very different perspectives. And when you put them together, there can so easily be misalignments with the work and learning that's being undertaken. But it's very important that we get this way of working right. Will is currently at the forefront of higher education, and there continues to be a number of very important initiatives to really drive Will forward. There's currently, for example, a $900 million government initiative to look at how universities are partnering with industry to deliver work integrated learning. Now, from my perspective, I think how these two very different and very important stakeholders, industry and academia, how they work together is critical for the future of work and learning. And this is why TD is so important for the future of Will. I think because as these two very different stakeholders begin to collaborate and work together in new ways, they really need to be able to acknowledge, understand and respect each other. They need to be open to new ways of working and partnering. And these new ways, they need to be co-created by everyone involved. And I think this is why I'm so excited by TD, because this is what TD does. And this is what we're doing right now. The grad cert team are co-creating subjects with industry partners in new ways. And we're designing subjects where we really can't design them without the perspectives of different stakeholders. And we're not restricting the design of these subjects to academia. We're bringing industry into our space, and we're stepping into the spaces where our industry partners operate. And we're using transdisciplinary methods to understand each other, to co-create the challenges we work on. And I think perhaps more importantly, the way we work on them. And it's really through this work that I think I'm able to better understand how we can partner with industry and how we might start to reimagine this future of work integrated learning. It's a future we can't create without partnering in new ways. And I personally don't think we can partner in new ways without TD. And that's kind of what this little image of a green leaf on screen represents. It's very much a new way of thinking, which lays on this foundation of diverse experience.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'll take over. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you guys about futures. Now, that might sound a bit funny, why do I say futures and why is it not the future? But I'd like to kind of propose to you guys that when you think about it, there is no one future because the future doesn't exist yet. The future is potential, it is possibilities. And the future kind of sits in our mind as a story or a kind of an idea that we have. And this story is kind of very important to sort of examine, because if we think about it, how we imagine the future will be can have quite a big impact on the decisions that we make in the present. And of course, the decisions that we make in the present will have a big impact on what happens in the future. So futures thinking is all about really being critical and being creative about this kind of story that we think. Now, we're going to go into this, in this course, we're going to look at different ways that we see the future, but I thought I'd just walk you through kind of a little example of how this can kind of change. So at the moment, we sort of see the story that we kind of have told about the future as this story about continual growth, that, you know, the GDP of countries will keep increasing, that wages will keep increasing, that everything will kind of keep increasing. And we're facing a point now with climate change where this future is kind of being called into question. And there's sort of this tension between this idea of a future where everything will keep growing and this future where, you know, there may be collapse, things might start unraveling. Now, in future thinking, we actually have 4 different ways that we can think about the future. And these kind of echo 4 patterns of change. And they are continual growth, collapse, constraint, and transformation. Now, in this kind of, in this grad cert, we're going to be focused, I think, a lot more on, not on those business as usual or on the collapse scenario, but rather that transformation piece. And I think that's actually the most exciting way that we can view the future. We're going to be doing lots of things in this unit. There's lots of future thinking tools and methodologies to help us really unpack how we think about the future and what we mean by regenerative futures. And this is a really beautiful concept where we can kind of conceptualize the needs of people and those planetary boundaries and try to figure out how we work in harmony with them all. Now, my image that I've got on screen is an image of the Museum of Futures. This is a real world project that was first commissioned by City of Sydney in 2018. It's an award-winning futures project, and it consists of lots of different visions of the future. It's quite exciting. And in the past, in other futures units that we've taught, we've had students contribute to real world futures projects like the City of Sydney 2050 vision. We've had students do work for envisioning the Atlassian Tech Precinct, and even working with Celestino and CSIRO on Urban's plan for the Badgery Creek development. So you guys will be doing futures thinking, which is very conceptual, but it will be embedded in real world applications. So that's quite exciting.
Hello, and it's over to me. I'm Sean. I'm coming in from a complexity and systems perspective on basically how do we avoid those clumsy solutions for a complex world, and we end up in those double binds, those things like problems around food production, climate change, and dare I say, even education, how old systems of education still propagate into the contemporary world, but don't provide the necessary skills to actually engage with this complex world and this really quickly changing world as well. So from a system perspective, I suppose a relevant question would be cause and effect. And it's not just a singular cause and effect. It's complex because we're dealing with many, many different variables. And those variables come together in many different ways from different times and different paths and different contexts that intersect to inform a space. And we're not always aware of what's being informed in that space. So really then we're dealing with a complexity of communication, and that communication is information from different contexts that come together. So the image I've got on the screen it's an interesting one, and this is it's an image that was built up by a person who viewed the world different from us, but who had a different perspective that made me see the world in a different way as well. And certainly when it comes to those complex problems, it's that diversity of different perspectives that come together that gives us the variety to imagine differently those possibilities from our current system into what might be. Thank you.
So for the next part of the session, what we've put together is the top 10 questions that we are asked about the grad cert, and we'll just go through them one by one. And obviously, as we're going through these questions, please, by all means, use the Q&A function at the bottom to ask further questions. So one of the questions we often get asked is, how is the grad cert different to other education, training or professional learning courses? What's distinctive about what we do? So some points of differentiation include the grad cert explores the multidisciplinary breadth, so it really goes broad, that comes with TD learning approaches and methods, and comes with working across different and diverse sectors and professional fields and disciplines. So we go outside of, I guess, the discipline of education even to bring other ideas from other disciplines to provoke our ideas about, for example, designing education opportunities. As Adrian was talking about, the program is challenge-based, and we recognise that we do need the diverse perspectives and knowledge to tackle the complex applied problems of our time. And I think one of the core differentiators about the program is that it really is centred on collective learning, which involves collaborating in these diverse teams on complex challenges with industry and public sector partners. So in other words, by reimagining education as transdisciplinary, the course explores the generative potential of collectives and collaboration across these disciplinary boundaries. We also focus on understanding and working with complexity, as Sean has mentioned, on understanding futures and the kinds of methods which Claire has mentioned, and on ecosystems. So the intention of the grad cert is really to widen participation opportunities for people to undertake postgrad study who might not traditionally qualify for an education-based or an education-focused program, but people who have an intense interest in learning and designing with different stakeholders and professional colleagues. So the program specifically welcomes diversity and building professional networks.
Okay, next up, we've got a very big question, but a very important question. You know, who is this course for? What are the career prospects? And how can this course support my career aspirations? Talking first to who it's for, I think it's very much designed for educators, for learning professionals, and education leaders working in the education sector, such as schools, TAFE, universities, as well as within industry. You know, the public sector, the community, or any other settings where people are actually responsible for things like learning provision or teaching, designing professional learning, or maybe leading educational initiatives to address challenges, or maybe leverage emerging opportunities. And this includes a wide variety of professional backgrounds, such as primary and secondary teachers, learning designers, academics, masters or PhD students, as well as professional development leaders and organizational learning professionals, or any professionals that are really keen to expand their breadth of that breadth of their own personal learning. I also really want to just take this opportunity to perhaps to highlight how the grad cert actually supported my career. Because as someone who changed careers nearly 7 years ago now, the grad cert actually opened up a lot of opportunities for collaboration and insights into new disciplines that I hadn't worked with before. And it helped me to cross some challenging boundaries that we all encounter in our career. And in crossing those boundaries, it also led me to joining TD school as an academic. And if you look at my background, it's been quite an uncommon, but actually very natural and very rewarding transition. So I'm personally a huge advocate for the grad cert because it enabled me to actually find what I love to do. And I never would have seen myself here 10 years ago. So the advice I'd give to everyone is really keep an open mind as to the possibilities that this can offer.
Yeah, it's a great question as well, and a really important one for, you know, lots of people who are working and have multiple roles in their life, dealing with family as well as work. Look, the great thing about it, it's a program that's part-time and it's done in like bite-sized pieces. That's what we term micro-credentials. And the great thing about part-time, often in this fast-paced world, we think, hey, we need to get it done now. But something that might be done part-time also gives you the time that's necessary to perceive the relationships happening in the world around you. And I find this method of study and this approach is a great way which integrates and makes me reflect upon my learning with my current practices. So that's a great question. In terms of the program, it is quite flexible. You can take the micro-credentials in different orders. However, we do recommend that you take TD Learning for Change as the initial subject, just to give you a bit of a foundation. And as Adrian was saying, just that negotiating that boundary into this wonderful area of, I suppose, collaboration. It's so human and so natural, but we don't do it. So this is a great thing about this program. There are info packs available on the website, and we can circulate those to you afterwards. Thank you.
Oh, and such a huge question. How will I be learning? And what are the assessments like in the grad cert and TD learning micro-credentials? So I'll give you a little bit of a glimpse of what that's like. And by all means, contact me if you want further information. So in the core subjects, we have self-paced mentored online learning. These core subjects open up 2 weeks prior to their official commencement, which enables students to explore the subject outline, engage with the material, and really prepare a study plan based on their priorities. So that when week 1 hits, we begin with a face-to-face online seminar. And that happens on the Monday from 7 till 9 p.m. And that then leads into really exploratory and intense self-paced learning experiences that run over the 5 kind of weeks. And to support that self-paced and mentored learning experience, what we do is we have weekly online informal conversations, which we run on Zoom. And whether we run multiple, we'll definitely run one each week. But it really enables all participants to come together and share and discuss key ideas and questions and possibilities that are kind of emerging from their studies. And then the second part is, as we've been talking, there's a really close professional practice integration and an integration with your professional practice in particular. So within the core subjects, you'll be exposed to and trial different ideas and practices, which you'll trial in your particular professional context or other kind of situation. And the assessments in the core subjects are integrated with students' professional practice. In the studio and lab subjects, they're slightly different. Well, actually, they're not slightly, they're quite a bit different. So they're really focused strongly on collective learning approaches. So that's where participants or students are immersed in that complex educational or professional learning challenge that cuts across sectors and stakeholders. And you heard Adrian talk about how we're working with organisation partners and industry partners at the moment to form up those challenges. And we're being really careful that the challenge is relevant to people from really different kind of backgrounds. So learning there, as you can anticipate, is highly collaborative. And it's also personalised, where you can benefit from the interactions with other professionals who are studying in that context, but and also contribute your knowledge and experience and curiosity to that collective's learning. And in that process, participants really work to extend their professional networks and future opportunities for TD learning. So this is about, studying in this program is about creating opportunities. So we will be picking up on your interests and your priorities as well, and be thinking about what we bring into that space. And also, again, you would be using your experiences within that studio subject to complete. So while you're working together, you'd be completing the assessment tasks individually. And I think that's really important in relation to thinking about what the relevance of what you've been learning is to your particular context. And again, that's mentored really closely as well. As well as the self-paced learning, just like in the core subjects, there was a self-paced learning component. In this subject, there are also evening online classes in the studio subjects. So they happen, so for example, in week 1, we begin with a face-to-face seminar, which is 7 to 9 p.m. on a Monday, and it falls on a Tuesday if there's a public holiday. And then that leads into online activities where you'll be working with other people online, but it won't be in real time. You can organise your time as whatever works best for you in those first 2 weeks. And then in weeks 3 and 4, we do a really intense, immersive face-to-face online workshop, a series of online workshops on Zoom. And what that intense workshops look like is that in weeks 3 and 4, on the Monday and the Thursday, from 7 till 9 p.m, we're actually running the workshop and tackling the challenge in real time. And that provides you with the material, well, some of the material to actually do your assessment tasks. So that means that there's 4 2-hour sessions in total in weeks 3 and 4. And then in the final self-paced and mentored week, that really gives you a chance to make sense of what happened in that studio setting, and again to look at the relevance, not only the relevance, but what it inspires, what possibilities it inspires for your own kind of practice. And again, like in the core subjects, the studio and lab subjects are really integrated with students' professional practice. So again, assessment tasks have that, that component, because part of what we're really interested in, just as we're working with industry partners to create these challenge projects, in working with you, we're also identifying the kind of partnerships that might emerge post the subject. So, so what we're looking at is creating networks of people who are interested in TD learning practices.
Okay, this is my one. What is the time commitment for studying each week? I'm sure everyone wants to know this one. So for a 3 credit point subject and micro credentials, this involves a total commitment of 75 hours. But since the subjects are integrated with your professional work, you'll find that you can be studying and doing your assessments while you're doing your current job. In fact, that's kind of the perfect way to kind of make it work together. The subjects also open up 2 weeks prior, which means that you can explore all the subject material, and you can, if you're really organized, prepare a really nice study plan, which is something that I would do, definitely. And then after the classes end in week 5, you'll have another week to complete that final assessment task. That's kind of how it will run. So all up, you can actually spread that 75 hours over 8 weeks, with 5 classes when 5 weeks when the classes will run, and the additional 3 weeks where you can kind of self-pace yourself. So.
Yeah, so we're staying on a online version at the moment for a number of reasons, but the benefit of something of working online is you're going to meet really diverse people from lots of different backgrounds who aren't necessarily local, that they could be interstate or international people, and that adds the diversity on the work you'll be doing in the subjects and in the labs as well. So we obviously, the campus is open if you do want to come in and use our facilities, and we'll welcome you to come in and use those facilities as well. And next year, we'll probably look at a combination or a hybrid model of some online work with some face-to-face work as well, depending upon needs. Thank you.
Okay, so another important question about IP. Now, I will start by saying that I'm not an expert in IP, and where appropriate, you should always seek legal advice. And actually, UTS Student Legal Service does offer students professional legal advice and referrals where appropriate. But what I can tell you is that in accordance with the UTS intellectual property policy, students do own the IP rights in the work they create in the course. And of course, really importantly, we can discuss any concerns on a case-by-case basis to really ensure that we understand and navigate any workplace-specific concerns you might have around the information you do or don't share through presentations or assessments. We can certainly offer flexibility here to really ensure you can make the most of the subject without being required to share sensitive or confidential information.
Sorry, everyone. Okay, so if you're not yet ready to commit to the full grad cert, what can you do? So you can actually do micro credentials in transdisciplinary learning, and you can enroll in these via the UTS Open website. That's pretty easy Google way, or it's open.uts.edu.au. And all the details are there on the website. I've even enrolled in some ones in different faculties, and it's pretty straightforward to do. And you can complete all of the transdisciplinary learning micros in 5 weeks. So currently the Learning for Change and Transformational Learning Studio micro credentials are live, and there will be another 6 that are going to go live over the next few months. So keep an eye out for them if you're keen. These transdisciplinary learning micro-credentials are equivalent to the grad cert subjects, and they're offered so that people can have a little bit more flexibility, both for themselves or if they're working in an organisation, and they run at the same time as the grad cert subject. So that's kind of cool. And you can, of course, do as many micros as you want. And if you successfully complete them all, you can gain the credit into or enroll into the grad cert if you want to. So.
Okay, this question comes up a lot. So what if I don't seem to fulfill the admission requirements? And what if I don't have an undergraduate degree or degree in education? Do I meet the prerequisites to apply? So what we've done with the grad cert, we've specifically created different pathways into the program. So for example, as Claire was talking about the micros, you can start with taking just 1 or 2 of the TDL micro-credentials. And as Claire was saying, that those micros are equivalent to the grad cert subjects. And there are no entry-level requirements for enrolling in those micro-credentials. We really do value the different experiences, interests and diversity of people from all walks of life and professions. So if you have a passion for learning and are a professional keen to expand the breadth of your own personal learning journey and also the career possibilities, then the TDL micro-credentials are for you. And as Claire was saying, if you successfully complete at least 2 TDL micros that are core to the grad cert program, then you are on track to enrol in that program, in the grad cert program. So that's an alternative pathway into the grad cert. What you would do is you would also then support your application by providing a 1-page personal statement, just outlining your interest in the course, as well as evidence of your prior learning and what you've been involved in your professional kind of work. So that's kind of the pathway via the micro-credentials into the grad cert. And then the direct pathway to enrolling in the grad cert is through if you have completed a UTS recognised bachelor's degree or an equivalent higher qualification, or submitted other evidence of general and professional qualifications that demonstrate potential to pursue graduate studies. And that's often in relation to the kind of professional duties that you might have held in the past or that you hold now. So that's evidence of your ability to pursue graduate studies. And in addition, for that direct grad cert enrolment pathway, applicants need to have at least 2 years full-time or equivalent work experience. So this question, how do I enroll for the grad cert? How do I enroll in the micros? How much does it cost? So what I'll do is I'll put a link in the chat. So as I'm talking through the next process, if you open up that link, you'll be able to see where you can kind of apply for admission. So when you go, if you follow that link, you'll see that there's a web page that has all the information about how to apply into the grad cert. And from that website, you'll also see that there are info packs that provide additional information about admin requirements. As Claire mentioned, it's really straightforward to enrol in the TDL micro-credentials. You just go to the UTS Open page, open.uts.edu.au, and then when you go to the course types and the micro-credentials, actually I'll put the link in to chat as well, so that you can chat. Panelist. So you can see the list of micro-credentials, and currently, as Claire also mentioned, 2 of the TDL micros are live, the TD Learning for Change and the Transformational Learning Studio. And we'll also be updating those 2 sites, those 2 courses, with some more information in the coming week. When you go to that, the page for those micro-credentials that I mentioned, you'll see at the bottom of the page that there's some information about discounts that are available, as well as the cost of the micro-credential, as well as the sign-up button. I'm now going to put in a link into chat, and if you open up that page, I can talk through how you can figure out what the cost of the grad cert course is. So if you click on the link, you can follow the steps we're showing you. So from the page that you enter, if you click on estimate course fees using the fees calculator, you'll land on a page where you'll need to specify certain things. So choose the search tuition fees by course. Yeah. And when you come to that page, the information, I'm assuming that most people who are in the forum at the moment are in Australia, and I know we have some international people who've joined us. So if you, for the fee type, if you choose postgrad domestic coursework, if you're in Australia, if international, you would choose the equivalent. Then you choose the fee year, 2021 or 2022. And similarly choose the cohort year, and then the course area is transdisciplinary innovation, and then in the text box just add in the title of the program, which is Graduate Certificate in Transdisciplinary Learning. And once you search, you'll see the fee per credit point. You'll get the latest information about the fee per credit point, and also per session, so for the whole grad cert.
And to those that are still here, thanks so much for joining us today. It was great to talk to you.